Yeah. I'll start with Anirban Mukherjee. You can unmute yourself, Anirban. I have unmuted you from my end. Please go ahead.
Yes, first of all, uh, thank you, Aiwei, for bringing us closer to Mr. Ramchandra Guha, who actually, after reading his A Corner of the Foreign Field, I felt that my passion for 25 years have not been entirely vested.
Thank you.
That cricket can be a serious field of inquiry of sociology and of politics and of history is felt by I felt that by reading two gentlemen. One is Mr. C.L.R. James, he's Beyond the Boundary, and then Mr. Guha, who's A Corner of a Foreign Field. I have read several times, and also his introduction to the Picador Book of Cricket, which from which he had made a few references, especially on the Test matches and the T20s and the comparison that he's made. Now, I would like to put a completely different question. I think he will not object to that question. It is something related to what he has wrote in A Corner of a Foreign Field, and which has a relevance in the modern Indian sociological and political connotations. See, I have got to read the great turmoil going on in South African cricket, of which he takes great interest. I know. I read so many of his columns in about South Africa in Telegraph. Well, the Black Lives Matter movement has thrown up a lot of questions in South Africa as to how to question the racial equations there and the race relations in the South African cricket team and the transformation and so on. Now, while reading A Corner of a Foreign Field and reading this South African churn right now, I was reminded of Talvankar Valu, that he had written so eloquently and so elaborately to dramatize the Indian cricket scene of the early 20th century. Now, my question to Mr. Guha is, now when the Indian society, Indian Republic is going through some amount of tough time, again I'm alluding to his writings in Hindustan Times that he has written on 26th of January. Now, given the great social churning that India is witnessing, be it its religious or its caste equations and so forth, now how does he see cricket team reflecting that kind of a churn in our society? Do we see our Dalit cricketers speaking, can we feel that our Dalit cricketers and others included in the cricket team, can we ever hear them speaking about the exclusions, if there is any? Or how does he view the Indian cricket through the sociological prism that with which he had interrogated Indian cricket in his A Corner of a Foreign Field? That is the question. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again for bringing me closer and allowing me to put this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirban. That's a very, very important question. First of all, you do me the undeserved honor of comparing A Corner of a Foreign Field to Beyond the Boundary. No book can be compared to Beyond the Boundary. It's the greatest sports book ever written. And you'll be pleased to know that I read it every year, devotedly and with the same kind of, educative experience as when I read it first more than 40 years ago. This is a complex question. India's first great cricketer was a Dalit Talvankar Balu, who is the hero of my book, Corner of a Foreign Field. He was India's first great cricketer because Ranji was an Englishman who made his name in England. He was a fabulous bowler, he was an outstanding thinker, but he never got his due. But he was yet appreciated in his time, and he was also incidentally one of the heroes of the great B.R. Ambedkar, the emancipator of the Indian people and of Dalits in particular. Ambedkar, as a young man, knew of Balu through his feats in the cricket field. The first public figure, one of the first major Dalit public figures, was a cricketer. His brother Vittal was an outstanding batsman, but there have been very few Dalit cricketers since. And I posed this question in Corner of a Foreign Field. What is the reason for that? Is it the cost of cricket equipment? Is it that ambitious Dalits take to other fields like law, civil service, and so on? But remains Indian cricket has overcome two kinds of divisions. It is now inclusive in a regional sense. Once upon a time, Mumbai dominated Indian cricket. In 1971, when we won in England for the first time, 7 out of the 11 were from Mumbai. Now they're from everywhere. They're from Jharkhand, they're from Assam, they're from Haryana, they're from Odisha. So the first division that has been overcome is that of region. You have regional diversity. The second is of religious inclusion. We remain regrettably a society in which Hindu majoritarianism and the persecution of Muslims is growing, but not on the cricket field. Zahir Khan or Irfan Pathan or Mohammad Azharuddin did not face this kind of discrimination that co-religionists may have done in other spheres of life, in renting an apartment or in finding a marriage partner or whatever. But Dalits and Adivasis, I would add, I'd say Adivasis have made a mark in hockey, but not in cricket. And it's a very complex question for which there's no clear answer. I mean, it's not clear why this is so, what can be done, should we have a South African kind of system where they are informal or formal quotas. South Africa, by encouraging colored and black players to play, by reserving seats for them, many outstanding cricketers have come. The cricket team has become better, is more representative of society. So this is a question, this is an issue that we should not ignore. I mean, I think that's something we should not ignore. And I'm glad you brought it up.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. That's Muhammad Asif Iqbal. Asif, I've unmuted you. Can you please unmute from your end and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Guha. Nice to meet you once again. I don't know if you recall meeting me. I met you twice, once in Bombay, once in Bangalore. And I was speaking also at a conference and you were also delivering a keynote. But I wanted to ask you the question then. I grew up in the States, so I'm not so well versed with cricket, but what about soccer or football? How come we could not make that football or soccer sports as popular as cricket in India, according to you? Thank you.
Well, that's a good question. I've answered it partly in my book, Column of Foreign Field. Why did cricket emerge as India's national sport? Indeed, India's only sport. You know, we are obsessed with cricket. Soccer is popular in some parts of India, Kerala, Bengal, Goa particularly. But it never really took off as an all-India sport in the way cricket did. Hockey was very popular. We were Olympic champions several times. But after the 1980s and our World Cup cricket victory in 1983 and the coming of satellite television, after that, cricket rapidly supplanted hockey. There's several reasons why cricket is really India's number one and sometimes sole sport. One, which I briefly alluded to in my talk, it is a participatory game. You know, Indians are a social and participatory culture. We like talking and conversing while we play. And in cricket, you can do that, you know, because the action is interrupted and episodic. You can't do it in other ways. A second reason is that cricket does not require, you can play it in the cities. You know, it doesn't require large grounds. Football requires a kind of big rectangular ground. Tennis would require a well-manicured court. Cricket you can play in the gully. Sunil Gavaskar famously perfected his straight drive in the gully. And the third reason, perhaps the most important, is it's the only game we're any good at. You know, it satisfies our nationalism and our jingoism. We're a nation of 1.3 billion people. Luckily for India, there is no Olympics in Tokyo this year, because had there been, a nation of 1.3 billion people would have sent a contingent of 600 and returned with 1 bronze medal. And New Zealand would have won 10 gold medals. You know, whereas cricket, we are still, it's not a world sport. It's only about 10 or 15 countries who play it. And we often win. We sometimes have the best batsman in Tendulkar, the best bowler in Kapil Dev, and of course the best team. And Indians are crazy with cricket. Given how much we invest in it, we should never lose a match. If we lose to New Zealand, there's something seriously wrong in cricket. There's something seriously wrong with the game, where the game is administered. But for all these reasons, you know, I mean, it's extraordinary. The adulation of our cricketers. They are more admired than our film stars. If you just look at the ads that people like Kohli and Dhoni have, they're far more than what, you know, Shah Rukh Khan and others have today. So it is a rather one-sided and obsessive, I love of cricket. It's being challenged now to some extent by individual sports, and particularly by female proficiency in individual sports, and particularly badminton. I think Saina Nehwal and PV Sindhu and Sania Mirza in tennis have to some extent brought other sports into the frame, and we need much more of that. And some of our female wrestlers, some of our male boxers, but it's slow. It doesn't get the kind of support it should. And even though I deeply love cricket, I wish it did not hog so much space in our public imagination at the expense of other sports.
Thank you. Vamshi, you can go ahead and ask your question. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sir. Good evening, sir. Ramchandra, sir. We keep reading your articles, and it was great interacting with you. My question is: we had a Kapil Dev in 1980s. Since then, we never had the kind of all-rounder we always wished to have. Irfan Pathan showed some glimpses. We had so much belief in Hardik Pandya, but as we all agree, the fact that India won the World Cup in 2011 mainly goes because of Yuvraj Singh's bowling along with his batting. So that is the importance. Why is India not able to produce? We all say Indians, we are nationalists, we love this sport, this is our sole sport. Why not an all-rounder?
So it's very difficult being an all-rounder. And it's more and more difficult in the 21st century. Vinu Makad, who was our first great all-rounder, or Amar Singh, who was a decent all-rounder, not great, played in the 30s. Vinu Makad played in the 50s. Kapil Dev played in the 70s and 80s when there were not so many demands on your body, on your time, on your energy. Now we play cricket all the time. If there's not IPL, there's one day cricket. If it's not one day cricket, there's a test match. If there's not test match, it's Champions Trophy, World Cup, Ranji Trophy. We're playing all the bloody time. And the burdens it puts on you, it's tough enough becoming a high-class batsman and perfecting that art, or become a high-class off-spinner. So it's hard to expect there to be great all-rounders. They come few and far between. If you look at England, over the last 50 years, they've had Botham, they've had Flintoff only for 1 or 2 years, and now they have Stokes. It's not as if they produced so many all-rounders. Australia, where was the last great all-rounder Australia produced? There was Keith Miller, maybe Richie Benaud to some extent. It's hard for me to think. Gary Sobers with the West Indies, now Jason Holder. South Africa, to some extent Shane Pollock, Jack Cullis. But if you look at even worldwide, it's not as if every great all-rounders of the quality of Kapil Dev, Vinu Makad, Jack Cullis, Keith Miller are few and far between in every country, and particularly in the 21st century, where the physical demands of cricketers are so great. I'd say one thing, one area in which all-rounders now develop more, and we don't see them as all-rounders, but we should, are wicketkeeper batsmen. Narayan Tamane was not expected to score 100. But now, unless you bat well and keep well, you'll not be the team. Gilchrist transformed cricket. After Gilchrist, you have people in every country who are keeper batsmen. Sangakkara, Dhoni, Rishabh Pant. So they are all-rounders too. So what's happened is, once you have a keeper who can score 100, you can choose one more bowler, because your keeper is not part of the tail, but he's a real batsman. So you can choose a specialist bowler. So the pressure to have a world-class all-rounder reduces once your keeper plays the role of an all-rounder. And that's what's happening in world cricket today.
Right, thank you. There's a question from Dipto Ghosh Chaudhary on chat, asking for your take on cricketer's diplomatic aspect.
No, I see cricket, for example, should we play cricket with Pakistan? I don't think cricket can help or hinder our relations with Pakistan. Cricket played a very important role in international relations once when it came to the boycott of South Africa. I think India led the way there. England wanted to play with South Africa. Australia wanted to play with South Africa. Our support for the anti-apartheid movement, right from the days of Jawaharlal Nehru, is immense and sustained. I mean, the role that the Indian government under Nehru and the Congress played in catalyzing global opinion against apartheid has been forgotten. And then it played that day, yes, we cut off sporting ties, and South Africa is hurt by it. And even the cricketers come around, and it plays a small role. The sporting boycott of South Africa, among whose leaders was a South African Indian called Sam Ramaswamy, and an Indian working in the UN called E.S. Reddy, who's one of the great fighters of anti-apartheid, against apartheid in the UN. The boycott of South Africa played a small role in ending apartheid. But whether you're playing cricket with Pakistan will bring peace with Pakistan is not something I really think will happen.
Okay, hope Dipto, you got your answer there. Mr. Ketan Kothari, you have a question? Go ahead, please.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Goa. I don't know whether you can hear me well because my connectivity is extremely poor here in Mumbai.
You're loud and clear.
Thank God. Okay, before I go to my question, I must firstly congratulate you for the huge, well-researched biography of Mahatma Gandhi. If you have seen such, and I have got some questions on that. I hope I will get some chance someday to ask you about.
You can mail me. You can mail me at ramachandraguha@yahoo.in.
Thank you. I'll certainly do that. I've mailed you. I mean, I've tweeted you, and you've been kind enough to answer about your last book that had not come for a long time about in that biography. Okay. Now the question. Something that I was expecting you to talk about. One phenomenon in my times and your time. Jimmy Amarnath. The comebacks that he made.
Yeah.
Something that that alluded your talk, and I was hoping that you would make some comment on that. Even his role in the that we all had. Everybody remembers Kapil's catch, but even Jimmy Amarnath did play his own role. Hardly is spoken by anybody.
Yeah, I mean, 40-minute talk, there's only so much you can do. There's so many cricketers I didn't talk about. And Jimmy Amarnath is someone I admired as a young man. I watched him many times. I've written about him in the past, in my columns and in my book, Spin and Other Turns, and Wickets in the East, published in the 1990s. I wrote quite a lot about him. I've written about the Lala too. It's just that, how much can you do? But he was an incredibly brave, courageous player of fast bowling. And of course, played a crucial role in the 83 World Cup. So yes, I mean, he's certainly someone I admired as a cricketer greatly.
Is he one of the finest players of fast bowling that you've seen?
For that year, I mean, that year, night 83, against Imran Khan and Waqar Yunis, and then against, great West Indian fast bowlers, yes, absolutely. But he's a fabulous player of spin bowling too. One of the columns I wrote him many years ago, I talked about how he was underrated as a player of spin bowling. I mean, the way he played Abdul Qadir. And those of you who remember the 83 World Cup final, there were 2 off drives he played of Larry Gomes. He got only about 20 or 30. But he played 2 exquisite lofted off drives inside out. Beautiful, which showed immaculate footwork. So he was a great player of spin bowling too, which we sometimes forget.
All right. The next question is from Avinash Shahi. Please go ahead, Avinash.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, iWay Connect, for organizing this event. Goa sir, thank you. I read your columns in Telegraph and Hindustan Times, Politics and Play and others. I'm just curious to know, can you share some experience about what atmosphere remains inside a stadium? Like you have been to many grounds, where you have experienced matches from first-hand experience. So when tense situations remains, how is the feeling among the players, and what is the facial experience that you have observed while sitting in the stadium? So I'd be love to know.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a very different experience watching a match live. Obviously, you don't get all the angles. You'll watch it, get it home in a television with all the replays. But and especially you're watching with friends or with family. I used to go with my uncle, now I go with my son, now I go with friends. And particularly a test match, but even not so much a T20 match, just tamasha. And a T20 match, the problems watching a match in India. I spoke about the problems with Indian commentators. There's also a problem with Indian crowds. They shout all the time. Tan, 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 all the effing time. And they don't allow you to watch the match. So, and in a T20 match, they'll do it. But in a 50-50 match, they'll do it less. In a test match, they do it even less. So you can observe the players, what you say. Their gestures, how they're coping, what is the camaraderie. Are Dravid and Tendulkar fighting? Are they seem to be friends? Or is there some cooling off? Is there some, mixed signals between the different players? So you get a sense of the character, the personality, and the human interaction you get in the ground, which you will not get, of course, while watching on television. But I can't really answer your question about because I can't get inside the players' minds. I mean, I'm just watching from the perimeter, from the boundary. So how they cope, who's cool, if, shall we say, there are 3 overs left and 18 runs to get, and 2 wickets also and India is bowling, it appears that Dhoni is more cool than anyone else. If you look at the way but that's just a superficial impression. It's probably correct, but is Kohli nervous? More nervous than Dhoni? Is he more agitated? But these are things that at least you get in the ground, you start thinking about. And that's a real pleasure about watching a match. Of course, live is this, and of course the conversation.
How much time it will take this webinar, ma'am? How much time it will take to get over?
Udit, we are coming to you. We'll take your question next. Sorry, Mr. Guha. Please complete it.
Also the conversation intervals, play a test match. The last over before lunch, 2 wickets fall. There's a buzz. Last, then you go for lunch, you chat. Who'll come out afterwards? What will happen afterwards? All that kind of pleasure, that kind of excitement, you won't get watching at home.
Okay, Udit, please go ahead. Your question.
Ma'am, my question is like how much time the webinar will take, and my other question is like how can I play cricket? Can just tell me?
So, Udit, where are you calling from, and what do you do otherwise?
Sir, I'm from India.
No, where in India?
Sir, Ghaziabad.
Ghaziabad. And do you have a vision impairment, or you don't have a vision impairment?
Sir, vision impairment.
Yeah. So you will need to look for an organization where people are playing blind cricket, and probably join there, because there is a Delhi Cricket Association for the Blind in India. You connect with me tomorrow by email, and I will give you the contact information. Yep, and then
you have my ID.
Yeah. Okay. So we will. Udit
Pandey, we've got his details.
So we will get back to you on that. Okay.
Okay, so all right. Thanks, Udit. Thanks. We've got a question from Sadhguru, Mr. Guha, saying, how do you see the current trend of increased sledging in cricket, especially with India and Australia?
Well, I think it's probably declined a bit. It was really bad a few years ago. Truly awful, one would say. I think with, of course, with stump microphones, with picked up penalties, it's declined a bit. But it went through an awful phase. I think Australia started it, but we rapidly caught up with them. Our cricketers rapidly caught up with them in our crudity and our vulgarity. And so we became quite bad. And that's, one doesn't need it. I mean, if you've got great cricketers, Tendulkar and Kumble never sledged. Steve Waugh never sledged. So that's, what does it? Your bat or your ball should show the way. And you play hard, you want to win, but after the game, you forget it and have a drink with your opponent. But I think I'm more hopeful. I think the last few years, it was really the first decade of the 21st century that was particularly bad. And now I think it may have become slightly more manageable. I hope so.
Thank you.
While somebody else is preparing to ask a question, I'll just quickly ask you, what are your comments on Rahul Dravid's declaration when Tendulkar was close to 200?
I think that was fine. I tell you, I talked about Bishan Bedi. I told you about Bishan Bedi. The kind of cricketer and character and human being Bishan Bedi was. When I was a student in St. Stephen's in my first year, before you joined George, we went to watch a Ranji Trophy match. Delhi was playing Punjab. Hari Kidwani was batting. He was from Hindu College, first state batsman playing for Delhi. He was 90 not out at the drinks interval before lunch. Bedi sent a message to him saying, hurry up, get your 100. At lunch, he was 99 not out. Bedi declared. He said, we have to win the match and we have to put the other side in. That's what cricket is about. It's the team, not the individual. So long before Rahul Dravid had done that, I'd seen Bishan Bedi do it. And Hari Kidwani never complained. He felt abashed. He knew that Bedi had given him an hour to get 10 runs and he couldn't get them. So 99 not out, now we have to bowl. We need to get them out. Thank you very much.
Right.
So we have several questions now. I'll go quickly to Viral. You can unmute yourself, please. Viral. Okay, I'll go to someone else in the meantime. Chandranath, you have a question. You can also unmute from your end and go ahead. Okay. Okay, I'll go to Krit Kedia. I have unmuted you. Krit, can you please ask your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Ma'am, you have my Gmail ID?
Sorry, you have a question for Mr. Guha, Krit?
No.
Okay, I'll come back to you then, Krit.
Ma'am, you have my Gmail ID?
Yes, I've got your Gmail ID.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Shantan, you have a question. I've unmuted you from my end. Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I am audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, sir.
सर मेरा जानना ये है कि ये जो क्रिकेट था, जो टेस्ट क्रिकेट था, the partnership about Ganguly and Dravid. It's a very good partnership. I saw a match in Eden Garden. My further. So how was your reaction, Ganguly and Dravid?
No, I think that generation, Ganguly and Dravid, that generation of cricketers, Ganguly, Dravid, Tendulkar, Kumble, and Lakshman. Those five. They had a fabulous bonding. And they, supported each other, reinforced each other. Also, they played a very crucial role in the post-match fixing era. India was tainted by match fixing. The cricketers before them, गोलमाल कर रहे थे. कई हमारे खिलाड़ी उसके बाद, what Lakshman, Dravid, Ganguly, Kumble, and Tendulkar did to re-establish the credibility of Indian cricketers in the eyes of the fans is, I think, very important.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, Shantan, please go ahead.
Oh, my last question, another to you, sir. What is the best captainship on your seeing match in Ganguly? And what was the tough time you seeing and Ganguly? You wrote some article when Greg Chappell has a Indian team coach.
I said, don't put me on a spot. I've given you 5 people I admire in that cohort. I'll add Sehwag to this. 6 great contemporaries. Don't tell me to praise Ganguly or criticize Dravid. Sorry.
Okay, Varun, you can ask your question. Varun, आपको मैंने अनम्यूट किया है. अपने एंड से प्लीज अनम्यूट कर दीजिए और अपना सवाल पूछ लीजिए.
Ma'am, I'm audible.
Yes, Varun.
Yeah. For Ramachandra Guha sir, I have 2 questions. One is about when we see the history after 1950 of history of cricket, we see the domination of poetry and the domination of the South Indian cricketers like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and also especially in Karnataka, in some tourneys there were 7 players from Karnataka. Now recently, when we see the from 15 years or 20-year history, we see the less number of the representing South India or from example from Karnataka. Why this decline started, and also why decline started when we see the history, and next my question is, and also our BCCI, our cricket BCCI is a richest board, but they are uncomfortable with the women cricket. They are not equally paid women cricket league, and also with the blind people, with the women they are playing, and also men, and they were not ready to accommodate this 3 section of our society. Why?
No, I think the second question is a very important one, but that's the question that the board has to answer. I can't answer it. When I was briefly in the board, Diana Edelji and I both tried to give women's cricket more importance. For the first time, Diana Edelji and I had a lifetime award for a female cricketer. It is only for a male cricketer. We also got a special grant for the blind Indian cricket team, which had won a championship in the few months that I was there. On the first question, this thing comes in phases and we need to welcome it. It was bad that Bombay was dominating, that Karnataka started to dominate, and that should not go on for too long. It's good if there is regional diversity. Dhoni comes from Jharkhand, and Harbhajan and Yuvraj from Punjab, and 2 or 3 players from Odisha. That's very good. I mean, that's the way cricket will flourish, when every state in India can produce and every community in India can produce top-class cricketers. So even though I'm a partisan of Karnataka, and I didn't speak in my talk, but my all-time favorite moment in cricket watching was when I was in the ground in 1974 and Karnataka beat Mumbai for the first time and later won the Ranji Trophy. Mumbai had not lost for 16 years. I saw Karnataka beat Mumbai. But after Karnataka beat Mumbai and won the Ranji Trophy, Tamil Nadu won, Hyderabad won, Railways won, Gujarat won, Punjab won. And this decentralization of Indian cricket, where players coming from everywhere, is very good and we should welcome it.
Yeah, and in fact, the last 5 years, I think Karnataka has won the Ranji Trophy at least 2 or 3 times, isn't it?
Well, it also, it's done well. It's not produced test cricketers. It's got KL Rahul and Karun Nair, but it's good. One should not be, it's good that they're winning the Ranji Trophy. Shruti, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I see India after Gandhi on your bookshelf.
That's a very, very strategic placement, and you noticed that.
I see a dictionary next to it.
And that is not strategic, I swear to God.
I don't believe you need a dictionary anyway.
No, I am just playing the moderator today, but I'm a huge fan of your writing.
But I was puzzled that I was a dictionary. I don't use such fat words. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Chandranat, I think you're trying to ask a question. I've unmuted you. MotoG5S, if that's your ID. If you can unmute. Otherwise, in the meantime, I think Anirban has requested for another question. If time permits, if you may allow Mr. Guha.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, Anirban, please go ahead. I have unmuted you.
Well, thank you once again. Mr. Guha, I'll have one more uncomfortable question, if you may call it so, to you.
Sure.
When you are one of the COAs, I mean, Cricket Committee of Administrators,
yeah.
In 2017, you wrote extensively about the superstar syndrome in the Indian cricket administration and in the Indian cricket scene.
Yeah.
And then the saga of Anil Kumble and Virat Kohli happened, which actually, well, as a matter of aside, I would like to concur with you in one sense. I also think that Anil Kumble is the best test captain that I have seen in my 25 years of cricket.
Thank you.
Well, now coming back to the question, do you see after so much controversy and then so much churning in Indian cricket of Lodha committee and Supreme Court monitoring and all this, do you think that, and given India has a highly influential and in true sense of the term superstar as the board president, and one of another son of another superstar gentleman politician as BCCI secretary, do you think that superstar syndrome has diminished a little, or you think it has increased? What is your take on it? One, and secondly, what is your take on this Black Lives Matter movement and this England West Indies taking a knee and all in this Test series, when actually the lot of history, the groveling episode that had already taken place between the two teams? So how do you see these kind of things panning out in cricket in days to come, and more importantly, this superstar syndrome? These are the two questions.
Also, and not the second, because it's more pertinent to my talk. I wrote the article of Superstar Syndrome several months after I left the board, and I didn't want to watch Dirty Little while it was going on. And I said two things. One is the superstar syndrome is not peculiar to Indian cricket. It's in every sphere of Indian life. I mean, our devotion to Narendra Modi is excessive. Our devotion to Indira Gandhi was excessive. The idea that one person will transform our lives is absurd. You need teamwork in politics. You need teamwork in administration. You need teamwork in entrepreneurship. Ratan Tata was great. Varghese Kurian was great. Amitabh Kohli is Amitabh Bachchan is a hallowed, like a god-like figure. So B.R. Ambedkar, in a speech in the Constitutional Assembly, said bhakti is a problem. Bhakti in religion is fine. You can worship Ram and Krishna and Allah and Jesus, but don't give living human beings that kind of deification. So it's a general problem in Indian society which hurts us in all spheres of our life. And cricket, absolutely. And I think I don't have much hopes. I'm disappointed that Ganguly, as board president, is advertising products. That's a clear conflict of interest. He should not be doing that. It's such a very bad example. I don't think really he needs the money. I think all the enormous credibility he built up as a cricketer and as a captain, he's now compromising. Clearly political interference, as you talked about, the Home Minister's son being secretary, all this is problematic. They're putting pressure on the Supreme Court to undo the Lodha reforms. So I am not very optimistic on that sphere. I mean, the superstar syndrome still seems to dominate our sport, our politics, our culture, and it's not healthy for a democratic society. Questioning, transparency, and teamwork are the ways in which a sport and a society flourish, not megalomania, superstardom, dictatorship.
Thank you. Sadhguru, we'll take your question next. You can unmute you from your end, please.
Are there any more after Sadhguru or Sadhguru?
Only Sadhguru, and Chandranath has not been able to unmute. So,
no, actually, my question has already been one question has already been answered. Thank you so much, Guha sir. So I've been reading your columns and articles. So I just wondered that I haven't seen much writing from you on women cricket in Indian contests. Like we have so many talented players in women cricket as well, like Smriti Mandhana, Poonam Yadav, or so many, to name a few. But they don't get their share as their male counterparts. Why? I mean, why do you think, and what can be done to kind of make this gap a bit kind of thinner?
Oh, I plead guilty to that. I have not given in my writings attention to women's cricket. There are a couple of very good books. There was a book by Siddhant Patnaik and Karunya, I forget who wrote. There's one very good book on women's cricket that came out, and one of the authors, Siddhant Patnaik, tragically died. But it's a first-rate book. There's some very good female writers. I mean, Sharda Ugra, one of our best writers on cricket, is someone I appreciate and admire. But I must plead guilty. That's not an area in which I have myself written about or given much attention.
Yeah, but I mean, could you just maybe think aloud, like what can be done in the current context? That's
a question that again must be answered by people directly in administration or in management. Ganguly should answer that question. Dravid should answer.
We are not privileged to write to him.
As it turns out, I mean, it's like I love cricket and I'm delighted to speak about cricket. But if I want to find a way of reforming our society, for example, I would campaign, and I've written about this. I think it's much more important that we have, I mean, in other spheres, including, women cricket is important, but women representation in the Lok Sabha, the Women's Reservation Bill, which has been, buried for so many years. It is an issue. And as I said, one of the nice things about working in the COA was that at least Diana Edilji was someone who, unlike the other members who were really, frankly, not really interested in substantive reform, she was pushing women's cricket. I hope that continues.
Ram, over the years, you talked about radio commentary being a very, very important part of your growing up years. If you were to, and you basically talked about the Australian commentators and the British commentators. If you were to rate, if you were to choose 3 commentators from India whom you rate on the top, or whom you think you can bear to listen, who are they?
You really put me on the spot, George. That's very, very, very tough. I mean, I can't. I mean, Harsha was a good radio commentator. Right. Harsha was, I think on television he talks too much. Talking too much is fine on radio, because the person can't watch, right? So, so Harsha was a good radio commentator, and I enjoyed him. Arnold Settleward was not bad. I'll name three since you mentioned. Arnold Settleward was not bad. And Pearson Sunita, who's too young, 60s, so was not bad. So I would say these three. Since you asked me for three, I'm giving you three names. You know, who are sort of okay. And Pearson Sunita, Arnold Settleward, and Harsha. As a radio commentator. On television, really, he talks too much. And that's true of all Indian commentators. It's all, either they are utterly boring and dull, have nothing to say. Harsha at least communicates, even on television, to be fair to him, he communicates excitement and enthusiasm. The other problem with Indian commentators are they disgracefully partisan. When you're a commentator, you're not supposed to take sides. The Australians and the Indians are disgracefully partisan. You listen to Michael Atherton or Michael Holding or Ian Bishop. Obviously, they'll be disappointed if their side loses, but that's not why they're commenting, to watch their side win. They're commenting to tell you the nuances of the game.
Right.
One thing I'd like to say, this is addressed to Anirban, but also to everyone else also. I have a new book on cricket coming. Probably the last book I ever write on cricket. It's called The Commonwealth of Cricket. It'll be out in November, published by HarperCollins. And it's a kind of it's very different from A Corner of a Foreign Field, which is a scholarly sociological book. This is a fan's book. This expands on some of the themes I've talked about today. It's a kind of a account of a 60-year love affair with the game of cricket. And it has many heroes, my uncle Dore among them, but also G.R. Vishwanath, Rahul Dravid, Anil Kumble. Unfortunately, many of the people I write about, Bishan Bedi, foreign cricketers. It has a chapter on great Pakistani cricketers I admire. So I hope some of you will read it. Commonwealth Cricket, it will be out in November.
Try asking now. Sanjay Dang, you have a question, or is that Poonam Dang? Please go ahead. Yeah, you're unmuted. You can please go ahead and ask your question.
This is a question from Sanjay Dang. He wanted to know if you can share some questions. You can share some anecdotes about Indian royalty and the cricket.
Indian royalty and cricket. So, many years ago, I used to write a column for the Hindu on cricket. It was called Cricket Law. It ran from 1997 to 2002. There were more than 100 columns. And I wrote, it's a long time ago, so it was more than 20 years ago. But I wrote 2 columns on the question of royalty in cricket. One was called Princes Who Played. So I chose the 11 of great princely cricketers. So of course there was Ranji, there was Duleep, there was Nawab Patowary Senior, Nawab Patowary Junior, there was Maharaja Yadavinder Singh of Patiala, there was Inderjeet Singh Ji, who came from a princely family, kept wickets for India, Ajay Jadeja, and 11 really good cricketers from a princely background. And as it turned out, all of them were, mostly all were batsmen, because princes like batting and all the jokers or the plebeians have to bowl to them, they want to bat. So it's a very one-sided 11, but at least there were 11 good cricketers. So my first column was called Princes Who Played. I followed it with a column we called Princes Who Paid to get into the team, And of course, the most famous Visi, who was a lousy player, but basically bought his way into the captaincy of the Indian team in 1936. And there were others also who just because Maharaja Porbandar was captain of India in 1932, just because he was a Maharaja, not because he was a player. So there were princes who played and there were princes who paid, And I think there were 2 kinds of princes who were interested in cricket.
Then of course you had the Prince of Kolkata.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, I think you've taken all the questions, and that's very kind of you to have spent so much time.
That was lovely.
All of them.
Thank you, Shruti.
Well, thanks so much, Ram, for investing this hour and a half with us, and it's been a pleasure. And I'm sure everybody who was part of this chat enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the book, The Commonwealth of Cricket, as and when it comes out. Will it be available in Kindle?
It will be available. Yeah, it will be. It should be.
Yeah, okay, because most of us would be using screen readers to read, and Kindle is an accessible format.
It will be available.
Yep. Excellent. So thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Thank you.